welcome to the show. I'm Angela Hart.
I have a guest on the show today that I'm so excited to introduce to you. He's fascinating. He's a Jewish man who was raised in a Jewish household, and he now believes in Jesus, that Jesus is the Messiah. And I find these fascinating stories that people tell me about. I want to know how this came to be. I want to know what it's based on, how his life has changed or not changed, what his family thinks, what his friends think. And the best part is I was raised as an Italian, good Catholic girl, and I became a Christian when I was in my late 20s. And most of my Jewish friends don't understand that. Well, wait a minute, you were raised Catholic. I thought that means Christian. But what we all really know is that becoming a Christian means having a relationship with the risen Messiah. And so now, the guest I'm going to introduce you to, Richard Flashman. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you.
Am I pronouncing your name properly?
You got it.
Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you came on.
Good to be here.
Yes, I saw you on YouTube, and a friend introduced us.
Oh, good.
And he introduced us and then directed me to your show on YouTube, and I thought you sounded like a very intelligent man. I want you to, and fun to top it off. So I'd like you to tell the audience first a little bit about your religious background growing up, but first where you work right now.
Okay.
And I'll leave it in your hands for a few minutes on that regard. And you can look right there.
I'm a professor of practical theology at the Charles Feinberg Center of Messianic Jewish Studies, which is associated with Talbot Seminary in La Mirada, California. And I've been teaching there since actually the September of 2013. Before that, I was a pastor of a church in Monroe, Connecticut.
Wait a minute. Now I got my Jewish guest on, and you were a pastor, so now you threw a total curveball for me. But I want to know about
backwards.
that. So let's stay current, and then you got to tell me how does a Jewish man become a pastor? So
right.
Let's back up a little bit.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you for introducing yourself. I wanted you to tell all about your background. I'm so glad you did that.
Okay.
So since you later became a pastor, let's back up to let's start at your childhood. You made your bar mitzvah.
Sure.
Tell me about that and what your religious life was like, and did you believe in God then? And then we want to talk about what you believe in Jesus today, because a lot of people believe in Jesus. What do they believe about him, right? It's all different.
Right.
So let's hear about your background as a young Jewish boy growing up, because, I forgot to add, I love my Jewish history. An Italian girl raised Catholic, became a Christian, and I love my Jewish spiritual history. And so that's why I love interviewing people who were raised Jewish. I want to know all about it.
Okay. My mother was raised in an Orthodox Jewish home in Atlanta, Georgia, and my father was raised in a Reformed Jewish home in Boston, Massachusetts.
What's the difference between the two?
Orthodox home, they practice the laws of Moses and as to a good degree. Reformed Jews are more culturally Jewish. They are identity Jews. They identify as Jewish people, but they in the late 1800s in Germany, many Jews were sort of nowhere religiously, and so Reformed Judaism grew out of that as a way of maintaining a Jewish identity in a more secular culture. Okay, and so they tend to be more secular, more humanistic, than Orthodox Jews.
And today, is it the same thing that I think most of my friends might be considered Reformed then? Because
about 38% of Jews are Reformed.
Okay, so not particularly religious, just culturally Jewish.
Culturally Jewish, right?
Maybe they celebrate the holidays and. Okay, so that's how you were raised.
I was raised. I was raised at Temple Israel in Boston, Massachusetts, and I was bar mitzvahed there. My mom and dad met in Georgia. My father went to Emory, and so they met down there. And then he brought her up to here, and I was raised in a Reformed Jewish home.
So your last name is Flashman. Oh, they were both Jewish?
Yeah, they're both Jewish. Yeah, yeah, both my mom and dad are Jewish.
Okay.
So we were raised in a Reformed Jewish environment. My father was a materialist. He believed that when you're dead, 6 feet under. That's it. There's nothing more. There's nothing more than that. My mother had religion. She was religious. She was, I would say that she was like someone who feared God, who respected God. And so I probably leaned towards her direction. Mm-hmm. And I know that she was. That her faith is important to her.
Okay.
Yeah. And but the environment I grew up in was more secular.
And did you go to religious training for your bar mitzvah or when you were older?
I went to Hebrew school. I went to what we call Sunday school. I ended up being confirmed at Temple Israel in Boston. Rabbi Gittleson was my my confirmation rabbi.
Is he famous?
Very famous. He's a Templeton Award winner. He was for his work as a Navy chaplain in Iwo Jima.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a great man.
I want to hear about if you got in touch
yeah.
with him afterwards.
No, I'll tell you what happened.
Okay.
I took I was in his confirmation class, and he started describing God in the confirmation class. And
he described what?
He was describing God.
God.
But I wasn't recognizing the God he was describing. So I went to his office afterwards, and I said, Rabbi Gittleson, I'm not recognizing, you're talking about God, but I don't recognize the God, that's not the God that I've come to understand here in Temple Israel. And he said, well, I don't believe in a personal God.
Oh.
And I said, I believe I said, what do you believe in? I believe in an impersonal force. And then I said, well, what about Messiah?
Oh.
And he said, well, I don't believe in a personal Messiah either.
And he was teaching at a religious school.
Yeah, oh yeah. Because again, much more liberal.
Okay.
Much more liberal perspective.
Like the liberal Christian schools.
Exactly,
Okay.
Exactly. And so he said, I believe in that one day we will bring in a better world. That a humanistic approach.
Okay.
That mankind is going to get better and better, and we're going to bring in a better world.
Uh-huh.
And that's what he believed. And I said, what about Jesus? Why don't Jews believe in Jesus? I asked him that, yeah.
Uh-huh. And how old were you?
I was 15.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why I asked is I went to a private school. That's another story. But and so he said that Jesus couldn't be the Messiah because when Messiah comes, he'll bring peace. Now, first he said, I don't believe in a personal Messiah anyways.
Right.
But our belief is that if there was a personal Messiah, he'll come and bring peace. And since Jesus came and there is no peace, he couldn't be the Messiah.
Interesting.
So that made sense to me.
Okay.
So for 7 years, I had no more questions.
Okay.
I was all set.
Okay, for
Yeah.
7 years. And now, 7 years later, you're how old?
7 years later, I'm in college.
Okay.
And I grew up during the 60s.
Fascinating.
I grew up during the 60s and during Vietnam, Watergate, all that time. And I went to college with a lot of questions.
Were you a hippie?
Yeah, a little bit. I was in the fringe end
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
My sister was more.
Yeah.
She was 3 years older, had more into it. But I come up with that that environment, and so I went to college with a lot of questions. At college, they basically said that man is a social being, and that if you change his social condition, you can change him and make him into a better person.
Okay,
and better people. Mm-hmm. So basically, they was teaching Marxism, socialism, mm-hmm. and I bought into that for about 3 years.
Uh-huh.
And I was a theoretical Marxist in college, and studied social thought and political economy, and I was writing on working life quality.
Okay.
And I ended up doing a political internship in Washington D.C. for a Massachusetts senator.
Wow.
And it was there in the office in D.C. that I came to realize that the problem wasn't in society, the problem was in people.
Okay.
That it wasn't a social problem. Society was only made up of individual people.
Okay.
So I began to realize that the problem was in the human heart, and not in the outer society.
The external,
and that I had the same problem everybody else had.
Okay.
I was selfish, and I was prideful, and I was, and all of those things, and that unless we could solve that problem, we weren't going to be able to solve the bigger social problems.
Well, you were a real thinking young man in school, and even before that. I mean, you were.
I don't know why. Some people are bothered by things. Some people aren't. I was.
Right. Okay, that's a good thing.
I guess. Yeah.
So then what happened? So here you are in your 20s. Mm. And by the way, how old were you when you did become someone who believed that Jesus could possibly be the Messiah?
It's coming very, very shortly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right, soon after college.
Okay, I'm not rushing you. I just was curious. Yeah.
So I remembered. I'm a senior year in college, and I've given up on my ideology, my socialistic ideology. And I'm thinking back to a young man knocking on my door when I was a freshman in college. And he knocked on my door, and I opened the door, and he said, "Hi, my name's Paul. I'd like to talk to you about establishing a personal relationship with Jesus Christ." And I said, "I'm sorry, I'm Jewish." He goes, "That's okay, so is he." And I said, "That's true." True. And so I invited him in.
You knew he was Jewish because a lot of
Jews don't know what he's doing.
Right.
I know. Yes, I knew he was Jewish.
Okay.
And we would joke about it in the Jewish community. Many jokes.
Okay.
But anyway, so I knew he was Jewish. So I invited him, and he shared what we would call the gospel. With me. He said that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. I said, "Why do you think he's the Jewish Messiah?" He said it's an historical fact. I said, "Where's your historical data?" He said, "The Bible." I said, "Come on, the Bible, oral tradition, human writing." He goes, "No, the Bible's an historical document. Read it." I wasn't interested at the time because I was in my socialist stage, and I was going into that for 3 years, But now in my senior year, I'm realizing the thought hit me that if there is no God, there is no hope.
Yeah.
and I began a search in my senior year in college.
If there's no God, there's no hope. Let's think about that for a minute. Expound on it.
Well, what I realized is that the world is in really tough shape. I was sort of a little student of history, and I could see that we were not headed in a good place. That there was so much inhumanity between men that we end up killing each other.
Yeah.
Unless there was some way out of it. And I thought socialism could be a way out of it, but I realized it's not, and it wasn't. So it hit me. If we couldn't get together and work together to solve our problems, that the only hope we had would be God. So otherwise, there was not going to be any hope that we weren't going to kill each other.
Why would the only hope be God to help us not be killers of each other?
Because I figured there's either man or God, and man couldn't do it. I could, because we're too selfish and prideful.
Interesting.
And so the only thing left would be if there's a God. I had no idea if there was a God or not.
Right.
I mean, I'm just, this is like a new thought to me now. I had a God consciousness, but it was. But it
wasn't personal.
It wasn't personal. It was like, God, like my mother used to say, that God's too busy to worry about us. He's spinning planets, and solar systems and galaxies and all that. So God just seemed very far away, if there was one.
Okay.
I didn't think there wasn't a God. I just didn't know. I thought it was one of those questions you could never answer. It was just a question that you're not going to be able to answer because how can we ever find out if there's a God or not? And so that's sort of where I was. But then I realized, if there is no God, then what hope do we have? So I began a search, and that search led me to the 53rd chapter of Isaiah. That's the Jewish prophet Isaiah.
So this is the Jewish Bible. Gentiles call it the Old Testament.
Right.
Okay.
Jews call it Tanakh.
Okay.
And in there, in the writings of the prophets, there's a prophet named Isaiah.
Do you happen to have one with you?
I do.
Do you? Take a minute to... There we go. Okay, great. Richard is pulling out a book called the Tanakh. I hope I'm saying it correctly. The Hebrew Scriptures. We call it the Old Testament. Some of the Gentiles, part of the New and the Old Testament, comprise the whole Bible now that the Christians use, but the Jewish people use the Tanakh. So this is what you have. Can you hold it up? That was the other one?
Yeah.
So there's different versions.
Yeah,
we have different versions. However...
But this is a good version, and let me read to you from.
Now, what made you open this up? Here you are searching for God. What made you decide to go to Isaiah in the Bible?
That's a great question. I was working in a location, and I got a mailer in the mail, and I opened it up, and it was about this chapter, and out of the blue, I don't know why,
Somebody just sent it to you?
And I started reading it. Yeah, I started reading it, and I said, wait a second. That can't be true.
Because it said it was in the Jewish Bible.
Yeah, and it talked about a suffering servant, Messiah, and I said that can't be true. The Messiah is going to come and he's going to establish peace. He's going to be a great conquering king. He's not going to be a suffering servant. So
that's very fascinating.
Yeah, that's huge.
I believe what our guest is saying is that there's two different perceptions about what's going to happen when the Jewish Messiah comes. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So some of us see him as a suffering servant who would be Jesus, who suffered for us, died, and then rose from the dead. But you're saying that some people believe he's coming as king. How could those two things be different?
Yeah, the rabbis were confused about that. There was two pictures of Messiah, basically in Scripture. One of a great conquering king, a Davidic king, and another of a suffering servant. There's even a third picture of sort of a man coming on the clouds in the sky in Daniel.
Daniel, which is in the Old Testament, the Jewish Scriptures.
Daniel chapter 7 is sort of a third little picture of his
but God is going to
glorified
come back
Son
like
of Man coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are different little vignettes and pictures in the Bible of what Messiah is going to be like. So the ancient rabbis thought there were two Messiahs. Messiah ben David, the great king, Messiah ben Joseph, the suffering servant.
But it sounds to me like Jesus is both, because he came as a servant, but he's going to come back as a king, right?
Well, yeah, but see that we would say that. I mean, as believers in Yeshua, we would say that Yeshua fulfills both those images. First, he came as a suffering servant to deal with our sins, and then he comes as a conquering king to set up his kingdom.
Oh boy! So
in Jerusalem, from Mount Zion in Jerusalem.
That's when he's going to come back.
Yeah, he's going to come back, and he was going to be the Jewish king of the world. Okay.
Wow. Share with me. So this little book comes to you. Here you are questioning who is God, where is he, what is going to make the world better. it's got to be God, because within ourselves we can't do it. And he gets this little book sent to him from Isaiah.
Little mailer, yeah.
Little mailer.
Mailer, yeah.
And Isaiah was one of the prophets, and these prophets were inspired by God in the Old Testament to speak about what God wanted people to know. So saith the Lord. And they what they said had to come true, or they would get stoned, I understand. So one of those prophets wrote this. So let's hear what you read that touched you.
So I got my Bible out, my Tanakh out, and I started reading it, and it said, very similar to this: who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of Adonai been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, nor beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Like one from whom men hid their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he had borne our griefs and carried our pains, yet we esteemed him stricken by God and afflicted. But he was pierced because of our transgressions. He was crushed because of our iniquities. The chastisement of our shalom was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. So Adonai has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, but he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb led to the slaughter, like a sheep before his shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. Because of the oppression and judgment he was taken away. As for his generation, who considered? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people, the stroke was theirs. His grave was given with the wicked, and by a rich man in his death, though he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased Adonai to bruise him. He caused him to suffer. If he made his soul a guilt offering, he would see his offspring and prolong his days. And the will of Adonai would succeed by his hand. As a result of the anguish of his soul, he will see it and be satisfied by his knowledge. The righteous one, my servant, will make many righteous, and he will bear their iniquities. Therefore I will give him a portion among with the great, and he will divide the spoils with the mighty, because he poured out his soul unto death, and was counted with the transgressors. For he bore the sin of many, and interceded for the transgressors.
That's Jesus.
Well, I read that to Jewish people without telling them where I read it from, and they'll say, that's Jesus.
But this is in the Jewish Bible.
This
is what I love. I have to just share something with you.
This was written 700 years before Jesus was born.
On earth.
On earth.
This is what's amazing. When I first was studying the Bible, when I first became a Christian, I already believed that Jesus was God. But somebody read that to me and showed me that it's in the Jewish Bible. And I'm saying, what? That's in the Jewish Bible? That's Jesus. I was fascinated by this.
Right.
And that's what happened to you.
I got stunned. The first thing I said after I read that was, what's Jesus doing in my Bible?
Your Jewish Bible.
My Jewish Bible. It's my Bible. You know, that's the Tanakh. I'm reading my Bible, and Jesus is in there. And so I began to realize that he could be the Messiah. And then I began to think he might be the Messiah. And then I began to think he's probably the Messiah.
You're giving me chills.
And then I began to think it was over a period of time. And then
How long a period of time would you say?
I'm going to say
a year,
a few months.
Few months.
Mm-hmm. I would say that then I came to realize I don't know, it was what we would call the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm. You know, or as the Catholics say, in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost.
The Holy Ghost,
which is
right.
the Holy Spirit.
Right,
How do you say it in Jewish?
The Ruach HaKodesh.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, the wind of God, the Spirit of God.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And I just began to take the words of Isaiah and apply it to my heart. Mm-hmm. And I came to realize that he was the Messiah, but I was scared to death because I don't know if you know, the Jewish people aren't supposed to believe in Jesus. And so I was scared to death, and so I didn't tell anybody that I was believing in Jesus. And I was sort of, for the most part, I was a secret believer for about a year. Didn't tell anybody. Mm-hmm. But I went on with this battle in me, you know, whether it was right or whether it was true, whether it wasn't. And then on April 30th, 1980, at Temple Sinai in Marblehead, Massachusetts, I was working for a kosher caterer, and I was asked if I would stick around and pack up the truck while everybody else went home. I said, sure, I'll do that. So I got a cigarette and a cup of coffee, and I sat behind the synagogue, and I started thinking, you know, just sitting there thinking and ruminating.
What is this temple? You say it's a mountain?
No, it's a synagogue.
But you said it was in Temple?
It was on Community Hill in Marblehead, Massachusetts.
Community Hill, I heard that was on a hill.
It's Temple Sinai. I think it's still there.
They call it. Okay.
And they used to have a Jewish community center up there as well. That's why they call it the Community Hill.
Oh.
And there was a swimming pool there and whatever. Anyway, so So I was at Temple Sinai, and I was thinking about, I was just relaxing before I had to clean up. They were having a donor dinner. And they began praying inside, and I began thinking about God and David and our Jewish history, and finally to Jesus, and I began to think, is it important, what the name of God is? Isn't it just important that we do right by our neighbors, that we try to treat people well, that we're good people? I said, isn't it important that what God's name? Who cares if it's Jesus or anybody else? And then as I'm standing there thinking about this, I look up, and I'm at the end of the parking lot now in this temple parking lot, and I look up, and in front of me is a tree that's filled with light from a street light shining down on it, and there's a dark shadow of the cross on the light on the tree. The tree is about 20 yards in front of me. Actually the ground went down about 20 yards, plateaued out, and then went that way, and the tree was over there. And I said, here I am thinking about Jesus, and there's this dark shadow of a cross. So I looked around behind me to see how the light behind me was being interrupted to cast the shadow onto the tree.
Right. That's what I would do.
Right.
What's causing the shadow?
What's causing the shadow? So I turn around, and there was a telephone wire going underneath the floodlight of the temple. So I said, well, it's not in front of the floodlight, but it must be the horizontal. Okay, so where's the vertical? So I'm looking around. I'm looking for the vertical. I see no vertical interruption of the light. And I said, it's there. I just can't see it. And so I turned back around to look back at the tree, and there was a gathering of light, and the light formed the figure of a man. The cross was no longer dark anymore. It was brightly illuminated. And there was a man in front of the cross, not on the cross, but in front of the cross, all in light. Oh. No flesh, just radiating in front of me as big as life. And I was in shock. Very big, very large.
Twice the size of a human?
Oh yeah,
like an angel.
Yeah, it wasn't an angel. It was all in light, and there's no flesh, there's no voice, just an image,
wow.
in light, wearing a robe that one would wear 2,000 years ago.
Wow.
And then I said, oh my God, it's Jesus Christ. And very soon after I said that,
you said it out loud or to yourself?
I said it out loud, and then it went away.
Oh my God! This is what they would call him in the Bible. The people
a vision, yeah,
right.
a vision, yeah.
And they'd call him God.
And it says in Acts chapter 2 that in the end times your young men will see visions and your old men will dream dreams.
And we're in those end times now.
We're in those end times now, yeah.
A lot of Muslims in overseas are reporting they're seeing visions of Jesus.
That's visions and dreams.
And he appeared to you in that way to confirm to you. So this is when you actually decided that he was the Messiah.
Well, I
for sure.
I was believing. To be very honest, I was believing, but I was struggling. Mm-hmm. I was scared. I wasn't.
What were you scared about?
Rejection.
Tell the viewers who would reject you.
Rejection, because Jewish people don't believe in Jesus. And this is sort of the one great taboo. You can be a Jewish Buddhist, you can be a Jewish atheist, you can be a Jewish axe murderer. You can't be a Jewish believer in Jesus.
Why do you think that is?
It's a good question. Yeah, I think.
Was it because of anti-Semitism through the years? I
think there's a lot. It's pretty complicated. There's a lot of issues involved.
Okay.
It's cultural. It's religious. It's historical. There's. And I got to tell you that as a Jew, and I know this for my own experience, you are told that Jesus is not for you. That's crossing the line. That's the one great taboo that you are in. Every Jewish person sort of knows that. You know that if you put your faith in Jesus, that you're basically opening yourself up for rejection from the Jewish community.
Oh, so that must be scary for a person to make.
Of course, because all my friends, all my family, everybody's Jewish.
In culture as well as religion.
Right. And so this is like losing your world.
Now, wait a minute, though.
Imagine if you're an Orthodox Jew living in Brooklyn and you believe in Yeshua. You believe that Jesus is the Messiah.
Are some of the Orthodox people coming to know him that way? Yeah.
Well, we think so. We don't see a lot of outward evidence of it. There are some who have come out, but they hit our websites a lot. And they come and they want to examine the claims of Yeshua as Messiah.
See, I can relate to Orthodox Jewish people much more than Reformed, and what's the other one? It's more liberal?
There's
after Reformed.
Well, there's a lot of unaffiliated Jews. That's like the biggest group, unaffiliated. Then you have Reform, about 35%. Then you have, I think it's 38% unaffiliated, 35% Reform, 17% conservative, and then about 10% Orthodox.
Oh, because I relate much more to the latter, because they're people who I think are really looking for God and trying to search the Scriptures. And
They're the smallest group, but they're the fastest growing group because
Really?
they're having children.
A lot of children,
A lot
right?
of children, yeah.
So here you are now. Do you still consider yourself Jewish?
Yes, absolutely.
What about my friends who might say to you, "You're not Jewish. You don't believe. You believe in Jesus. You're not Jewish anymore."
Right,
what
right.
do you say to that?
Well, that's what they tell you. And what I say back is, like, if Jesus is the Jewish Messiah, then believing in Jesus is the most Jewish thing you can possibly do with your life. If he isn't the Messiah, then it's a bad move. But if he is the Messiah, then believing in Jesus is a Jewish thing to do. And every Jewish person should believe in Jesus if he's the Messiah. Now that sounds strange to Jewish ears. When I just said that, all your Jewish audience said, they went like that. But the logic of it is impeccable. The question is he or is he not the Messiah?
And the big issue is the peace. This is what I've heard from my friends. There's no peace. And actually, we have about a minute left or two. And we have 1 minute left. And the big issue that comes up has to do with, well, where's the peace? Can you address that? Because we have, like I say, about a minute
Sure,
left.
yeah. There will be peace. What we believe is that he first came to bring peace to our hearts. Shalom to our hearts. Okay, first, that's what Isaiah is saying. Is that he came to bring us inner peace, inner shalom. All right, and then he's going to come and bring shalom to the world. That one day that they will beat their swords into plowshares and
What does
their
that mean,
spears.
beat their swords?
That men are going to turn the implements of war into implements of peace.
Oh, I never knew what that verse meant. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. And so there will be peace when Messiah comes. And by the way, he is a Jewish Messiah. He is coming back for the Jewish people. He is going to rescue the Jewish people, and he is going to be their king. And they will recognize him as their king.
So he came first to suffer,
Yeah.
and then he's coming back again to reign.
And he also came first for the Jewish people.
That's right. First to the Jew, then to the Gentile.
That's right.
Thank you, Rich,
Right.
so much for coming on the
You're
show.
welcome.
By the way, everyone, we're on Tuesday nights, 8:30, Channel 34. As a reminder, please don't text and drive. It's so dangerous. Please consider the claims of this gentleman and the claims of the Jewish Bible. And God bless you, and please tune in again. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for watching. Hello again, and thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the show. And if you have any thoughts or concerns or ideas for a show or questions, please contact us. Our information is below. And remember, we want to know what's on your heart.